Welcome to Elevate eCommerce, the podcast where we elevate your e-commerce game. Join our host, Hi Mag, CEO of Eva, as he shares the latest strategies in Amazon, omnichannel, and advertising. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just starting, Hi's insights and expert interviews will help you thrive in the e-commerce world. Tune in for practical tips and transformative success stories to elevate your business to new heights.
Welcome, everyone. So we are at another episode of the Elevate e-commerce podcast, and I have a great friend from Asia now together with us, and it's quite early for him. So thanks for him to wake up a bit early. And Dano Falk is our guest today. And it's really a great pleasure to have him on the Elevate e-commerce podcast.
Thanks for having me. Hi, it's a great pleasure to talk to you again. We have done this before. If you remember, I had you on my podcast. It was fascinating to hear your life story. And so here we are on the second podcast. So thanks again for having me.
Thank you, Dano. I mean, there is like a couple of very interesting topics here. Besides, we will always talk about advertising and everything, but and I think, two very interesting topics that we should definitely touch, because Dano has a great life experience and also entrepreneurial experience. So he's an entrepreneur for decades and he created many companies. So he'll talk about that. He'll talk about also a very, very interesting topic for US sellers, which is the Japanese market. Like, pretty much 99.5% of US sellers have absolutely no idea what's going on in Japan, although it is one of the largest Amazon marketplaces, and it's not even only about Amazon. We'll talk about these topics. Maybe let's start with Dano. Maybe you introduced yourself to us and also talk about your entrepreneurial journey.
Oh boy, how much time do you have? Okay, I promise I'm gonna keep this short to a minute. So I was born in Ukraine, but my ancestors are all German, so we migrated back to Germany when I was 10 years old. And that's when I started my entrepreneurial journey. When I was 14 years old, I started buying broken bicycles, fixing them and reselling them. But there was a logistics problem with my mom. She kind of was fed up with sending around these bicycles, so I had to stop this kind of early business of mine. But the first thing I did after school is to just start working. I just wanted to know what is work life like. I didn't want to go and sit in a university for another 3 years. So I started, doing things like sound engineering, DJing, and then I started desktop publishing. Those days it was like a new thing that you could digitally create something on a computer. That was like in 1992 or something. Yeah, so that's what I started my marketing journey, so to say, with a friend. And then I had my agency running in Munich, and I've been engaging with e-com businesses and building my own online businesses ever since. I lost count, but I think it was 16 altogether. And 10 years ago, I moved to Malaysia because it's a beautiful place to live. And I'm running my agency Dev Device from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia right now. And just FYI, Dev is not because I cannot hear, it's just my initials, Dano Edward Falk.
Right. No, I mean, this is already amazing. And I really enjoy meeting with people, having that kind of a global citizenship. I also feel like a global citizen. Probably I also spend time in 50 countries and, I've done many things in my life. So when you meet with a person like that, I mean, you kind of like feel one thing, which is you don't know exactly what is right and what is wrong. Like, I mean, a lot of people which are living in a certain city, culture, religion, everything, they all know what is right and what is wrong. But when I meet with a global citizen, and I kind of want to share this with you, because the more I live, I really don't have any idea what is right and what is wrong because everything changes. The reality, the perception changes from one place to another, from one culture to another. What's your feeling about that?
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, if you spend your whole life in one place, of course, there's a very limited amount of ideas and concepts and beliefs and religions and culture you are exposed to, and you think that is the one, that is the only one. But as soon as you start moving around and you start living in different countries, in different cultures, in different continents, you realize, how much spectrum, how much variety there is. I mean, I'm not going to tell. I mean, Malaysia, it's crazy because here we have there's no like one ethnicity. There's Indians, Chinese, there's Malays, and then there are all these foreigners like me who all come together here, and there's such a variety of culture here. So yeah, I fully agree that I also learned a lot coming here and experienced, like Buddhism and the Chinese beliefs and all these Indian cultures, and they have. Fully agree. I mean, at some point you realize there's no one way, there's no one like right thing. There are many different ways to think about life and making decisions.
Absolutely. And because we are in e-commerce and Amazon is kind of occupying a huge space in that e-commerce, and our revenues come from Amazon. Same thing applies to Amazon too, right? I mean, when I see that people talk about this is the one strategy you will be successful, unfortunately, it's not like that. So depending on many different parameters, the things change, and also even depending on time and competitors and everything change, the things change too. So the same strategy that works doesn't work the next time. So one of the things that normally we talk about this advertising strategy a lot, but because we want to specifically talk about the Japanese market now, besides that advertising strategy, maybe let's kind of keep it as a second question, but let's kind of first talk about Amazon Japan, because there is a missing opportunity for all the US sellers. Well, given that 60 to 70% of US sellers are actually Chinese sellers. So what is that? And even like the official numbers are like 52 or 54. But if you add the Chinese who are veiled under the US umbrella, I mean, probably we're talking about 65 to 70%. So that is the Chinese sellers, then the US sellers. I mean, what is it about the Amazon Japan market?
So the funny thing is that, and I ask this question a lot, like, what do you think is the hierarchy of the size of Amazon marketplaces? If you say, obviously US is number one. And what you think is like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so forth. And if I say that Amazon is number 4, everybody's like, what? So nobody is aware of the fact that Amazon Japan is the 4th biggest Amazon marketplace on the planet. So it's US, UK, Germany, and Japan. So that is one thing, which is people should take note of. There are like 130 million Japanese in Japan, and they are very active buying stuff on Amazon and Rakuten, which is the 2nd biggest marketplace in Japan. But it's a completely different animal. So if you're familiar with Amazon, obviously it would make a lot of sense to stick with Amazon. Take advantage of this opportunity, which is huge, not just because the marketplace is so big, but also, as you mentioned, like 99% of people are not aware of it. So chances are that your competitors, which are you competing with right now in the US or in Europe, are not yet in Japan. So these are like 2 big reasons. And another big reason is if you are manufacturer in China or in Southeast Asia, obviously your shipping cost and your shipping time is a fraction of what you pay to bring your stuff, over to the US. So there are quite a few things which are, in favor of looking at this opportunity at least. And I mean, why am I talking about Amazon Japan? So I've been selling on Amazon for many years, and in 2019 I sold my business. I started focusing on just doing my agency stuff and helping Amazon sellers with what I learned. And shortly after that, a friend of mine approached me and he said, "We want to start selling in Japan. Can you help us?" And I was like, "What do you mean, Japan?" So it was, for me, those days, it was a very new thing as well. And I had to learn a lot of lessons about how this works, how it is different. how Japanese language is like a whole world in itself. It has like 4 scripts in it. So you can write the same word in 10 different ways using different scripts. So it can be quite challenging for someone who has never dealt with the Japanese culture. But yeah, we figured all these things out. We found out how to deal with importing, certification, setting up your brand registry, and running your seller account in Japan. So we kind of had to learn it the hard way. And after having done all this homework, and I think that's like an entrepreneurial thing for me as well. I mean, I find that oftentimes that I do all the hard work to figure out how to make this happen. And I think this applies to you as well. Hi, you figured out, how to create this platform and how to provide all this value. And then you say, okay, so now since we've done this, why not offer this to other people as well?
Absolutely. Now, this is really interesting because I also love the Japanese culture. I've been to Japan many times. And when I'm in Japan, I feel like not only just as a foreigner, I feel like a real alien, not like the US alien, because in US, the immigrants are also called aliens, but let's say the British alien, because everything is different. The way even the Japanese experience web and mobile is different, because the way they read, like the images, what they want to see on a listing is different. So when we talk about maybe that's, I kind of see 3 areas that I would like to talk about. So let's, the one you already mentioned, right? There is all this customs and logistics and, compliance and everything. So my assumption is we don't need to dig into that because you take care of it. And there is already a complex process. We don't need the sellers to even know about that. But when it comes to the listings, what is interesting with the Amazon Japan? How are you going to, how do you kind of take a US listing and convert it into a Japanese one?
Yeah, so the first part is that when you are already selling in US, and let's say you have a few hundred reviews, you don't have to start from scratch. So we can simply bring your listing into the Japanese marketplace, and then we can start to localize it. And now when I say localize, it's not Google Translate. There's much more to it to actually identify the right keywords, how Japanese people call these things. Sometimes the Japanese use completely different terms for a product or than what you would expect or what Google thinks. So we have to find out how do Japanese people call these things, and we work with native speakers, obviously, who help us to kind of double check and verify everything we come up with. So the first one is, of course, the text part, where we make sure that we kind of translate the listing properly and that we use the search terms that Japanese people would actually use to find this product. And then, of course, there's the image part. So I still see a lot of listings on Amazon Japan which are not even customized, which are not even translated. So, of course, the minimum thing we can do is to kind of swap the language in your infographics to Japanese. And then, of course, the next level would be to actually look on how Japanese people would kind of create this kind of images. And they do this differently, as you have mentioned. They have a different perception of their visual world. It can be so congested, and it's such a funny thing that on one side they have all this minimalistic culture, the tea ceremony where everything is completely minimalistic, but if you look at their magazines, they are like swamped with stuff. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, you cannot identify. So everything is like small writing and exclamation marks and all these anime figures all over the place. So it can be like really, really congested for a Western person. So we also, in the next step, as I mentioned, we would also want to kind of adjust the listing images to the Japanese culture, which can be a long journey, but it can be a step-by-step approach. So the first of all is to do the proper translation, to translate the copy in your images, make sure everything makes sense to Japanese person, and then the next step will be to optimize.
Got it. So let's kind of call it a kind of a second step. So the first step is to take care of the logistics, customs, import, export. Second is like the listing optimization. Maybe anything else that is custom to Japan in terms of advertising, pricing. Very happy to hear from you as well.
Yeah. Yeah, what else is different? So one little piece of good news, you don't have to have a local entity in Japan to sell in Amazon Japan. So this is like, for example, in India, you need that, right? If you kind of start selling in India without having like a local company, in Japan, you can do that. So you don't have to open shop in Japan. You don't have to open an LLC or any company. You can use your bank account as a foreigner. And so all this is rather smooth. What you need to know is mostly is a certification part, which can be quite demanding. So everything that touches the body, touches food, like even a pan or like a Tupperware needs to be certified. So we need all the certification stuff that can be something that takes some time in the beginning to start the process. Then of course, we have to register our brand in Japan. So there is this funny portal called PlatPat.
Okay.
That's how they call it. USPTO in Japan is called PlatPat. So you have to go there, you have to submit your documents and get your brand registered so you can actually use like brand registry and your seller account. That's another important thing to know. But beyond that, as soon as all this is taken care of, it's a pretty smooth process. So you just and of course we can also we will connect you with our logistics provider. They will you will ship. They do the customs clearance for you. All this is taken care of. Then they ship the Amazon FBA stuff to Amazon. And that's basically it. So you start selling, and then we can manage the seller account as one of our services. Another important thing for people to know is what happens outside of Amazon, which again, I think is very important to bring in external traffic.
Okay.
And I heard on a webinar yesterday that Amazon will reward us with 3 sales for every sale that we generate from external traffic. I'm not sure how correct that is, but it's definitely something relevant and something that Western people need to be aware of, that this whole off-Amazon presence and traffic can be a bit more challenging than in the US, because in the US, well, you run Google ads, you do Facebook stuff, maybe Instagram, TikTok. So we are familiar with all these Western channels. Facebook barely exists in Japan. So if you run Facebook ads, the only people who see this is like 70-year-olds, apparently. So the whole social media universe is slightly different. Influencers are still big. So we can use influencers if we can find the right people to help us generate traffic. Google ads are working quite good for us. But for example, there's no WhatsApp. The main social channel in Japan is called Line. It's something I guess no Western person has ever heard of or dealt with, and it also works very specifically. It's not like where you can simply run ads. You have to build your community and stuff like that. So just for people to be aware, external traffic is a bit more tricky than in the US, but it can be done, and if you're smart about it, and we can always also help with that to build your off-Amazon presence. And having a brand website with the Japanese version of it is definitely something really important, because especially if you're selling like in a higher price tier, which is not an issue. Japanese people are willing to spend money on quality products, but they want to see proof of who you are off Amazon. They don't take Amazon's word for it that you are the great brand who is selling this great product. They will check you out off Amazon. And if you don't have a Japanese website, they will maybe move on to your competitor.
Got it. No, that's a very, very important hint here. A couple of things coming to my mind, but the first question is, so in the US, the FBA network is very much mature right now. Almost every city has a warehouse. How does it look like in Japan? Like, is it all FBA, or the sellers also leverage FBM?
Well, we always recommend to our clients to use FBA because same as in the US, you get ranking priority when you sell FBA. There are 6 warehouses in Japan, and so Amazon Japan FBA is working very well. One of our logistics partners have their warehouse next door to the Amazon warehouse, so they can practically carry over your goods. So this FBA stuff is working well, and I think it's not much different compared to the US. I would definitely use FBA if possible, unless you are selling, I don't know, couches. But it's definitely the first choice, and it's working really well.
Okay, that's great to hear. And in terms of maybe the categories, I don't know if there is a specific category that you would recommend to focus on, or is it all categories? Also, even for US sellers, what would be a good category?
Well, I think the category you're selling in is the best category because you don't really have a choice, right? I think I would like to tweak the question a bit. I would like to maybe if you are a Western brand who was thinking of maybe like considering this opportunity, the question is, how is this brand doing in Japan? Because of course there's so many categories. There's I mean, one general thing, as I already mentioned, that food and beauty stuff needs to be approved, needs to be certified. You don't sell big things to Japanese people because they live in very small places. You know, they don't have like a patio or a garden to put, you know, some umbrellas and big furniture. They don't use big things in their kitchens because everything is small. So if there was like a general advice, go for the smaller things and not for the bigger things because Japanese people simply cannot fit them in. But in a specific case, to give someone an educated decision to make, is this a good idea? What we do first is this thing called marketplace assessment. So we will take this brand's product, we will go and do our due diligence and check what is happening in Japan. Are there sales? What is the price point? What are the reviews like? What are the competition like? So we can, I think the only way to make this decision, which is a big one, you know, to start selling in a new marketplace, is to have some real deep data on what is happening in your specific niche. And we can also help to create this kind of report.
Makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, it sounds all great, and I'm pretty sure that you already launched a lot of US or European brands in Japan. So maybe you can tell us a nice case study about any experience that you have with launching in Japan.
A nice case study. Yeah. So let's say well, I don't really disclose my clients' numbers here because we have this confidential how you call this in English?
Confidentiality.
Confidence. Yeah. It's such a long word, man. Confidential. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we for example, we are working with one international brand that supplies Apple accessories. So they supply accessories for for iPhones, for iPads, bags, chargers, and all these things. And yeah, it has been a very interesting story to see how we started from scratch, and we had a lot to learn still when we started with this business. But they are doing well now, so they have established their brand in Japan. They're also selling in Apple stores. So this is one client where I see like this has made a lot of sense for them, and not only are they selling B2C right now, but this Amazon presence has also helped them to generate awareness with the distributors and to find people who are now looking to sell their products in retail. So it can go many ways. Like start selling on Amazon, but then this can also be like a stepping stone to enter the retail market, which can be another huge opportunity.
Oh, that's great. Great to hear that. So you know that I really enjoy always talking about AI, being the AI guy. So I always ask my guests, so what's their relationship with AI? How do they use AI in terms like in your business, not specific to Japan, but I think it may also help. But
Oh
we'll be
yeah.
very happy to hear from you about you leveraging AI.
Oh yeah. But you are real, right? You're not an avatar, huh?
I'm not sure. As I said, I don't know what is right and what is wrong.
Okay.
Maybe we are
Yeah.
all not real.
Yeah.
Who knows that
Yeah.
we are
Let's try
real?
some prompts. Let's try some prompts,
We are
right?
just like, you and me, maybe we are just,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe it's
imagination.
just like
In
AI
this
Dano. Yeah, yeah.
dimension, it seems like we are real, but is this the right
Yeah, yeah,
dimension?
yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe it's just a very sophisticated AI. No, no,
Exactly.
it's of course it's a super relevant question, and without AI, I mean, if yeah, I don't have to go into this direction like how it's important. Um, I use it as my smart companion a lot of times. So whenever I have a question, I do ask Mr. GPT like, "What do you think of this?" I do, and it's quite good at translation, by the way. So it's if you ask GPT about Japan, if you ask them like, "How would a Japanese person spell the word pencil?" And what are the different ways for a Japanese person to spell the word pencil? You get amazing results. So you get, I mean, for us, for Japan, it's a really helpful tool to kind of dig into all these different varieties of how people, call things and how they write it out. So in this area, it's a huge help. And doing market research, it does help me a lot. And one of my favorite things is to convert CSV files from one version to another. So I don't know if you had this case where you download a CSV files of leads and the first and second name are like in one column, like for example, but your email system needs them to be separate in two columns. And if it's 2,000 leads, it's a pain in the behind, to put them apart. So this is where I see like GPT doing a great job to kind of convert CSV files from one version to another and do it smartly so it can actually isolate the first and second name. We have other cases where, customers are sending us the sales reports and they are all over the place. And then we use AI to kind of generate this specific sales report as a CSV file that makes sense for the accountants. So converting CSV files, doing market research, and giving insights into like Japanese culture. These are the three areas where I really appreciate GPT, for example.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's great feedback. I only have two more questions, but the second one is like, I'm going to ask you about a e-commerce hack. But before that, we talked about Amazon, we talked about Japan. I mean, you're an e-commerce person. You also mentioned Rakuten. And at this moment, even in the US, with the raise of the Amazon fees, every single brand is looking at diversification of the e-commerce as well, different marketplaces and the others, especially like Temu and Shane and TikTok are already doing a great job in terms of even eating up some of the market share of Amazon in specific categories. So what's your omni-channel approach? You can kind of talk about Japan, or you can talk in general what you think about the omnichannel beyond Amazon.
Yeah, I think a lot about of the omni-channel approach, and I think it is quite specific to the culture and country where you're at. So it's not like one size fits all. But I mean, the obvious first thing I would always have as a brand owner is my own brand website and my own brand store. I think that is it's very obvious, but still, like not everybody has it. Not everybody is really running it efficiently and using all the tools that you can use to increase your brand presence and increase your sales on your own store, which is the only place that nobody can take away from you. And as we all know, Amazon can shut you down, and it happened to me, and it was not fun at all. If you have like your life business sitting there and it says we are suspended because a customer said something, and what the customer said was nonsense, but still, my account is suspended, and in 30 days from now, we're gonna let you know if we reinstate you or not. So just another reason to not depend on Amazon alone. And well, the marketplaces that we have the most experience is our own stores. It's our WooCommerce store. It can be Shopify. It can be any platform. It can be BigCommerce is a great one which we're also engaging with a lot. So this is the ones that we focus on. If arts and crafts, it's obviously Etsy in the US. Beyond that, I would say it's all about your brand presence, wherever if depending on your product and your niche and your audience. I think the most important thing to have is a brand presence which is independent of any platform that can be shut down. To have an email list, because that's the only leads that you actually own, and nobody can just take it away because Google stopped liking you or Facebook doesn't like you anymore. So have your email list, have your brand presence, and build that brand presence on all the relevant channels that which resonate with your audience. I think that is the strongest way forward. And of course, it depends on your audience. It depends on your country, your culture, which would specifically be the best match for you.
Absolutely. No, I like that very much. More like, having Amazon and D2C coexistent make a lot of sense. So let's talk about this e-commerce act. Like normally we talk a lot about advertising in this podcast, and this time it was more about Japan, like your experiences, how to expand. But I think that you're going to give us a hint about advertising now, isn't it?
Yeah. I was warned about this e-commerce hack that you would ask me about. And yeah, we actually have, we have not invented it, but we have applied something that worked really well for us. And this is like the mini bid PPC campaign, I would call it. It doesn't really make sense in the first glance, but what we do for all our clients right now, we create an auto campaign that includes all their products, and and the bid is like ridiculously low. It's like like 5 cents, 10 cents, like something that Amazon would never accept in a normal case, which will be like 10% of their suggested bid. Yeah, that's what we put in as a bid, and of course most of the time nothing happens. But the funny fact is that sometimes our competitors run out of budget. So they stop bidding on these keywords. And that's when Amazon has no other choice than, show our ads at a ridiculously low price. And we tend to see like a cost of 10% and less on that. It's not like the main revenue maker, obviously, in the account, but it's definitely something you should not miss, because it's kind of free money. It's free sales, because you're paying almost nothing for these campaigns, and surprisingly, they still get traction. You still get impressions and clicks, and these clicks are obviously super, super cheap.
Excellent. Yeah. We all need to find ways to maximize the profits, right? That's what also we do with Eva. Dano, that was an amazing conversation. I'm already thinking about maybe I should take a new journey to Japan. It's a fascinating country. I also recommend that all the US Amazon sellers and Europeans think about Japan, especially US, as most of the businesses in the US, and they really don't think too much. Most likely, based on what we are talking about, even with a great partner like you, it will be a lot easier than expanding into European marketplaces too. If the logistics and certifications are sorted out, the rest would be not that difficult having a partner like you. So I think, Japan really represents a great market for Amazon sellers. It's a great way of hedging, like the business and expanding into a totally different market. So thank you very much for all the information, Dano. It was great to see you again.
Yes, same here. Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye.